Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing Sports. In boxing, you find a way to win or you find a way to lose. Someone out here who looks to be winning is none other than Australia's own, like I like to say, Aussie, oi, oi, oi. Jai Opetaia, the pride of Australia and the pride of Samoa. 29 wins, 23 knockouts, 0 losses. Let me close this out right here. I hate when that happens, you know. He's coming off of 4 consecutive knockout wins. And, you know, interesting enough, Jai Opetaia has been an announcement that he signed to Zuffa Boxing. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't see that coming. At first, I was like, why would he sign to Zuffa Boxing? But then you got to think about, well, Zuffa Boxing is owned by Dana White, co-owned, for those who didn't know, by Turki Alalshikh. Just knowing Turki Alalshikh is a co-owner and bringing the big talent like Jai Opetaia over there, that means that Jai Opetaia is going to continue to make his big purses. This situation with Zuffa Boxing is something we had to sit back and allow it to play out. Because when you think about the signing of Jai Opetaia, for me, I'm trying to figure out what happened. Because Jai is the undefeated IBF and the ring cruiserweight champion. And he out here officially signed a promotional deal with Zuffa Boxing, becoming the most high-profile boxer to join the organization so far. They got some fighters with names, but not somebody like damn Jai Opetaia. Zuffa Boxing is the new fight promotion backed by UFC boss Dana White and, of course, the co-owner, Turki Alalshikh, where it seems like the goal is combining combat sports business muscle with deep financial backing, which makes sense because when Turkey's in the house, every day is Thanksgiving. Opetaia announced the deal on social media, expressing excitement about the future, calling for unification and undisputed status in cruiserweight. Let me tell you, he's chased a lot of goals, but he struggled to secure a lot of these goals under the traditional boxing structure, which a lot of people complained about just because of the politics of boxing. But anyone who comes over to Zuffa, you know how Turki Alalshikh, how he operates and his philosophy is, he wants drama, he doesn't want dominance. So that means anyone out there who's trying to protect their belts, you know, over there at Zuffa Boxing, their traditional sanctioning body structure, that doesn't exist. But the bottom line is, we got to see how all that plays out. Because this is a big move for Opetaia. At 30 years old, coming off of 4 consecutive knockout victories, Opetaia is widely seen as one of the best cruiserweights. Well, many people actually feel he is the best cruiserweight on the planet. So for him signing with Zuffa, it's going to give him a bigger platform and exposure, because wherever Turki Alalshikh is at, you know the event's going to be big. And wherever Turkey goes, I'm sure Jai will go. You see, Zuffa Boxing has broadcast deals already locked in and is launching events quickly, which could offer Opetaia more consistent U.S. and global exposure than he was getting under previous promotional arrangements. That's important for any fighter aiming to be a superstar, not just, you know, a champion running around here with belts and say, hey, look at me, but nobody knows me. You can also give him potential leverage in negotiations, rather than waiting on purse bids and sanctioning body politics, which has really, you know, hurt the sport of boxing and has continued to hurt the sport of boxing up until Turki Alalshikh's involvement. But with Turkey involved now, Opetaia now has, you know, the right backers with, I'm not even going to say the pockets are deep. I'm going to say they're bottomless. You know, they print their own money in Saudi Arabia, so, you know, they do what the hell they want. So Jai's not going to have a problem with that. And there's a willingness to pay premium purses to attract unification fights. So I do think there's a huge possibility to get fights with, you know, someone like Zurdo and then David Benavidez. I don't think it's going to be an issue for those fights to happen. Matter of fact, I think after David Benavidez fights Zurdo, don't know how it's all going to play out, but you would think the next move would be for David Benavidez to fight Jai Opetaia. Anyway, there's going to be opportunities there for that and for more big stage fights. Now, Jai has publicly expressed frustration in the past about not landing meaningful unification bouts. Zuffa's platform could give him more leverage to force those matches or create alternatives outside traditional promoter rivalries. But there's still the question, what the hell does this mean for Zuffa Boxing? Well, I'll say this. Opetaia's addition instantly legitimizes Zuffa Boxing in a way that a lineup of unknowns could not. Just like Canelo Alvarez signing to DAZN, he signed over there with Eddie Hearn to fight on DAZN. They worked out that big deal. Remember when they brought Canelo over to DAZN and he was working with Eddie Hearn and those guys? The entire boxing world went upside down. They said, why would Canelo go over there? Because at first people were really apprehensive. But anyway, by him going over there to DAZN, DAZN benefited greatly because it legitimized DAZN. Just like Opetaia going over here to Zuffa, he's now legitimized it. And I just think his presence will elevate the brand. Before Opetaia, Zuffa's roster was headlined by lesser-known prospects. Now they have a world champion and proven knockout artist, which helps them sell cars and negotiate TV deals. And I do think Charles Martin is, he's a good fighter. But, he hasn't really been fighting, and a lot of people feel that, why would I watch him? F.A. Ajagba, really good fighter, not as active as he could have been. Maybe didn't perform to his potential just because of the politics of boxing. But he's over there on Zuffa as well. But those aren't the names that are going to get the juices flowing when it comes to diehard boxing fans. But you mentioned Jai Opetaia. Ears perk up, eyes open, and they start looking and listening and paying attention. But this just means there's a serious intent by Zuffa Boxing. They could have went with their platform with a bunch of unproven talent, a bunch of up-and-comers, and people will just sit there and be like, man, I ain't going to those damn events. But Zuffa has shown it wants to compete with traditional promoters by having marquee names. And they're going to get them because of the money. This can help lure other champions who feel stuck in boxing's current system. Now, of course, I still don't know what direction all this goes, but I was saying when I talked to Clarissa Shields in an interview the other day, hey, we out here feeling like you should have went and signed with Jake Paul, with MVP, because of the exposure. We're thinking that it's a better opportunity. And she said, hey, why would I go there? There's more money over here. That's what she said. So maybe with Jai Opetaia, he said, okay, the way I was doing things, not so bad, but not really what I want. And with us saying maybe he should have stayed the traditional route, working with the sanctioning bodies, maybe he's like, why would I do that? Kind of like Clarissa Shields. I'm going over here where the money's at. So people are always going to have an opinion. You know what I'm saying? And with one thing for sure with Zuffa, they can help lure other champions who feel stuck in boxing's current system. Unlike Demetrius Salita and Win Records and Clarissa Shields in their situation, I don't know if they have the backing, the name, the muscle to lure anybody who feels stuck in a situation to come now and face somebody like Clarissa Shields. I just don't know if there'll be enough money there to make somebody who may not want to do it. But this also could be a possible strategic play towards bigger names. Some observers speculate that adding Opetaia, a world ruler in any division many top fighters want to unify, could be a part of a broader strategy to entice other bigger names like David Benavidez to consider Zuffa Boxing deals. I'm telling you right now, I do believe David Benavidez, I don't know if he'll sign there. I'm sure Turki, Alalshikh, Dana White, PBC, they will sort out a way to make the Opetaia David Benavidez fight. We all know, man, that when it comes to the world, money runs the world. And I think a high-profile champion gives a promotional credibility when chasing even bigger names, and that's exactly what they're doing by signing Jai. But big picture-wise, and then the boxing politics, look, this signing happens against the backdrop of Zuffa's ambitious, controversial plan to restructure boxing. Still a lot of different opinions on that. Some are for it, some are against it, some are kind of in the middle, like we got to wait and see how it plays out. Dana White and Turki Alalshikh have openly discussed the future where Zuffa champions and rankings matter more than traditional sanctioning bodies, and where fighters might fight in traditional formats or under Zuffa titles, depending on agreements. Now, that approach has split fan opinion. Some supporters say it offers a solution to perennial boxing programs and problems. In other words, low coordination between promoters and belts that never unify, leaving champions stuck in limbo. I do think it's stuck in limbo. And I like the way with Turki Alalshikh coming on the scene, he's been able to make some unifications and undisputed distinctions. But before him, it was a problem. And even now, people still complain. But the way they're going, they're trying to get rid of that. Can they do it? I don't know. I got to sit back and see. Can Zuffa Boxing attract all the big talent to come over? And now, for some, feel like they'll be taking a pay cut. But for those guys who are used to making big money, I remember Turki Alalshikh saying this, they will continue to make big money. But the other guys who are coming over, especially who, are considered prospects, they do have this pay structure for them, and not everybody likes it. The bottom line is you got to win. You keep winning, you make a lot of money. You don't win, well then, you got to look at yourself in the mirror and figure out why you found a way to lose instead of finding a way to win. But a lot of the critics argue that Zuffa's model could water down world titles, create a parallel universe of champions, and risk boxing's history and structure, which is an interesting take. So Opetaia's signing is the first real test case of how this model might work in practice, and whether elite fighters can grow their careers both inside and outside their traditional sanctioning body system. So I'm just trying to understand, with Jai Opetaia, there's some opportunities here, there's some risk. Now, as far as the opportunities, he can definitely get some unification fights. I think they become more attainable if Zuffa negotiates creatively with other promoters. And all that means is money. That's all this boils down to. There could be more global visibility, grow his brand internationally, get him out of Australia, have him fight in other countries, and that brand of his will explode. And I do think by Opetaia trusting them, he's going to find himself making larger paydays than he experienced boxing only with other promoters. And I think it's only bigger and better for him. But there are some risks that he should consider. Uncertainty over whether Zuffa will allow him to keep sanctioning body titles if they pursue their own championship structure, potential reluctance from other promoters to make traditional championship fights with Zuffa-aligned fighters. And I do think there'll be some promoters who are going to put up some resistance, but again, the money. I just think for the right price, promoters will be like, take my fighter, they can go fight. If they lose, they lose. And basically, just sell the W. You know what I'm saying? To just sell off the win to someone else and be like, hey. And you know what? You can't blame these guys because they can go out here and fight someone else and try to maintain their integrity, get paid less money, and still lose. So you might as well go over there, get a bigger paycheck, and have your fighter risk a loss and lose whatever winning run they were on or undefeated posture that they currently had. The bottom line is, with the right money, fights are going to get made. But there are some guys who are going to try to possibly isolate from legacy belts if Zuffa's model diverges too far from the historical boxing system. But I'm going to tell you, with all these risks that I'm talking about, I really don't know how much it really matters when you're talking about money and the money that Turki Alalshikh brings to the table. I think if Turki Alalshikh wants something, he's not even going to come and bullshit with these guys. He doesn't have time to go back and forth. He's like, what do you want? Tell me what you want right now. And once they tell him, I'm thinking like, okay, good. Because in Turki's mind, from listening to Bill Haney and Devin Haney talk, they went in there ready to negotiate with Turkey. And they went there with a number in their mind, and Turkey came with something much bigger than what they had in mind. And they immediately just shut up and said, good, no problem. They didn't go back and forth. They didn't say, they just said, yes, sir. Yes, sir, Mr. Turki Alalshikh, sir. And that's what they did. And you can't blame them. And I think that'll be the case with everything that Turki Alalshikh is doing with Dana White, Zuffa Boxing, and guys and getting opponents to fight a guy like Jai Opetaia. When they make them the offer, I think they're gonna sit there, man. They're gonna lock in, add attention, salute Turki Alalshikh, and say yes, sir. But I don't know. We gotta see. I think this is a evolution versus tradition, and you're always gonna get some pushback, and that's what happens with the fans and industry reaction. It's all been mixed. You can go on Reddit, social platforms, and you can just see that some are celebrating. Okay, this is good. New path to big fights, big money, outstanding. Others are like, I don't know. I don't know about signing a Zuffa. They kind of hinted at not wanting to work with other promoters or traditional sanctioning bodies. Could limit Opetaia's championship opportunities, harm his legacy. But I'm going to come back to what I was saying. That money that Turki Alalshikh brings to the table, I think it makes everybody happy and cures all headaches. But the sport of boxing is just undergoing a lot of debate, and it comes back to what I was saying. I think it's like how they're trying to evolve it versus how things are being done traditionally. So at the end of the day, somebody was asking, so what do you all think the signing represents? I was reading some comments, right? What does everybody think this means? What's going to happen? Well, I'll tell you, for Opetaia, it's a chance to break out of the frustrating unification stalemate and access global platforms and deeper pockets. I think he's going to be the face of Zuffa. And when they bring other fighters on, they'll also be, have their images lined up there next to Jai. But right now, he's the face of Zuffa. He gains greater promotional muscle behind pushing his vision of becoming undisputed and fighting the best in the cruiserweight division. And he could definitely go on after he does that to get big fights in the heavyweight division. And Zuffa could bring big names over. Because, again, it comes back to the type of money they're willing to spend to make this a successful boxing platform. I just know we got to wait and see. But it seems like he's going to give the promotion a champion with credibility and marketing power. That's what Zuffa Boxing is going to instantly give that. They have a champion. Jai Opetaia has credibility. He's marketable. So that right there, again, it goes back to what I said earlier about legitimizing Zuffa Boxing. And I think for Dana White, it's going to shift perceptions from UFC-style novelty, where there's a lot of people who feel the UFC and what they've done, great. But when it comes to money and fighters, not so good. But this is going to give him an opportunity to have the perceptions about him and the way he does business in the UFC to change, especially to become a legitimate boxing player, because he got Turki Alalshikh by his side as a co-owner. And when Turki's in the house, every day is Thanksgiving. Some people were watching, they're like, I thought Zuffa Boxing was owned by Dana White. Why is Turki Alalshikh involved? I'm like, I got to explain that to you. You kidding me? We all know when Turki's in the house, every day is Thanksgiving. You don't think Dana White's stupid? He's like, whatever you want to do. Sit back, have a conversation. It's a win-win for Dana. And Dana is not, he was not going to push back against that. But that's for Opetaia, the benefits, Zuffa Boxing, the benefits. But for boxing as a whole, I think it raises questions about how fighters can balance external promotional opportunities with traditional title pursuits, and whether the sport needs new models to finally crack the unification deadlock. And I think this is what could happen. I don't know. If you ask me my opinion, I don't know, man. Me, I'm a thinker. I like to let things play out. I try not to be knee-jerkish. Let it play out, think things through, and then we'll see how the cards fall. Anyway, y'all keep cool. The cruiserweight monster, Jai Opetaia, is now part of Zuffa Boxing. It is what it is, right? Aussie, 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 oi, oi, oi. In the breeze.